Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this last webinar in this series of webinars on the PFAS topic. And we've had sessions on the analysis, the monitoring and the remediation techniques. And today's webinar will be on the inventory and the prioritization of the PFAS risks in Flanders. And first, we'll have my colleague Sam Fontaine, who will give an introductory presentation on the inventory and prioritization work we're doing in Flanders. And the second presenter will be Natasha de Splinter from Consultes. She will present the actual works that's going on that topic. So we'll have the two presentations in a row. Afterwards, we'll have a moment for discussion, but I invite everyone to have questions already in the chat, and there will also be answering in the chat throughout the presentations. At the end of the discussion, at the end of this session, we'll also have some discussion on the future of this webinar series. So I invite you all to stay till the end. It's very important for the future. So we'll start with Sam Fontaine. He's a bioengineer working more than 20 years at OVAM's soil department, and he's mainly worked on the remediation programs of Flauwpotex, BOFAS, and since June 2021, the work focused more around PFAS, of course. So Sam, I give the floor to you, and you can share your screen.
Thank you, Chris, for the introduction. First, I will share my presentation. As Chris already mentioned, I will first give a global overview about the PFAS inventarization project, and afterwards Natasha will go into the details for the inventarization of the industrial PFAS-related sites. Early June 2021 started what we call today the PFAS crisis in Flanders. At the beginning, our focus went to the production site of 3M itself, but soon OVAM was requested to inventory all the PFAS-related sites in Flanders. Our inventory consists of three aspects. First, the sites where fluorinated fire foam, the so-called FFF fire foam, was used or stored. And secondly, the industrial sites where PFAS was used in industrial context, in their industrial processes. And third, we have a list with other PFAS-related sites. But first, let's look at the fluorinated fire foam, the FFF fire foam. But how do you start with this kind of inventory? And in a couple of weeks, as requested, it was not easy because those sites were not registered, neither in the municipal inventory of the risk sites, neither in the permits. We need information about the former and current practice sites of the civil fire brigades. We need information about former and civil fire stations itself. And most of all, we need information about incidents where this kind of fire foam, the FFF fire foam, was used. But also we need information about practice sites of the industrial companies with in-house fire brigades. In Belgium, mostly, but not merely, the Seviso facilities. We also need information about practice sites of the civil protection, the civiele bescherming in Dutch. We need information about practice sites and civil airports. And at least, at the end, we also need information about the military sites, airports or others. Dus for OVAM, this kind of information is not easily accessible. And for the industrial context, for the PFAS suspected use in industrial context, we were prepared. In April 2021, we had already made up a first guideline for the PFAS investigation. By the link on the screen, you can always check out the latest version. Which kind of industry are related to have used or use PFAS in their processes? First, the electronics industry. Here we look mainly at the printed circuit boards, the print plate. You can see an example on the screen, and also the industry with the semiconductors. And for the next industry is the photo industry, where PFAS were added in the developing agents for the development of the old school film rolls. Then for the galvanization of the metal plating facilities, mostly with chrome, PFAS compounds are used in the foam suppressant to reduce the exposure of the toxic vapor for the employees. In the textile industry, we see PFAS containing products where or are used as a water and dirt repellent. Yeah, you can find it in floor covering, you can find it in furniture fabrics, you can find it in rainwear, in shoes, all different kinds of textiles. In the paper and packaging industry, it's used in the production and in the processing industry. Typical examples are the pizza box, the bread bag, and baking paper. But also in the paint industry, PFAS is also used in the paints to allow them to flow and spread more easily. It's also added to hydraulic fluids, PFAS-containing compounds, and for brakes or fluids for brakes or transmissions or for steering, mostly but not solely in the aviation industry. And also in cosmetics, PFAS compounds are added to improve the water resistance, for example, in sun blockers, or to improve the sliding ability, for example, in shaving foam. So you can see PFAS is almost everywhere. So for all these kinds of activities, we selected the corresponding high-risk activities and installations in the list of Vlarem and Vlarebo, and then we ran a query of our database, the part consisting of the municipal inventory of the risk sites. For each municipality, we gathered a list of the PFAS suspected sites in the industrial context. On the screen, you can see an example, a fictive one example. For each municipality, we also made an overview map, and for each individual site, we made also a detailed map. And on June 19, 2001, a letter signed by three Flemish ministers, Somers, Beke, and De Meer, three ministers to express the urgency, was sent to all the 300 Flemish municipalities. In attachment of this letter, the list and the maps, as mentioned before, were added. The municipalities were requested to check out the information and to add missing or additional information. This with absolute priority for the sites where the FFF, the fluorinated fire foam, was used. Therefore, the deadline was the 1st of July 2021. So they had only a couple of weeks. For the PFAS suspected use in industrial context, the deadline was July 15, 2021, so they had a little bit more time. We checked out and cleared out all those raw data and information we received from 269 municipalities in-house. In total, 826 sites were considered to be PFAS suspected because of the use of the fire foam. But after screening in-house and sometimes external, for example, after a first check on the site by a soil remediation expert, 99 sites were reclassified to be not PFAS suspected. At the moment, for 641 sites, the startup of a preliminary soil survey, a verkennend bodemonderzoek in Dutch, was already commissioned by OVAM. For more than 420 sites, this preliminary soil survey is already executed and submitted to OVAM, and nearly 300 sites, the survey is already evaluated by OVAM. Together with all the other available information, for example, the permits of discharges, our files in our database, the information we received from the salt treatment facilities, all those information was delivered to external consultants, Abesco and Consultes, to check out the sites for the PFAS suspected use in industrial context. But in the next presentation, Natasha will illustrate their working process. At the moment, a total of 5,161 sites are considered to be PFAS suspected in industrial context. You see quite a number. Of course, we have also another list, a third list, as already mentioned, the PFAS production site of 3M itself, the Teflon production sites, DuPont and Chemours, the landfills, the sewage treatment plants, the waste incineration plants. So the total list will contain a large number of sites. But for the completing of the list, the time is unknown. At the same time, we hope when the list is completed that we can make it as soon as possible available at the PFAS Explorer, the PFAS Verkenner. You can also check out the link on the screen. And for the further approach, we developed a global approach and we presented it to our Minister Demir. But at the moment, it's not possible to present you more information about this further approach. I'm sorry, but we are asked not to do it. We planned it on the start, but they asked us to not go into the details of the further approach. So it is the end of my presentation. When there are some questions, you can always put them in the chat. I will answer them, or maybe afterwards, after the presentation of Natasha. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Sam. And then we'll go to Natasha Desplanters. Natasha has a master in law and several diplomas in environmental chemistry, and she now works as a consultant for the Consultes Bureau, and she will present the work they're doing now on the inventory schemes. Natasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris and Sam. I hope you can see the screen in the meantime.
Yes, works perfect.
Perfect, okay. So in June 2021, OVAM has requested Consultes whether we were able to perform a very desktop survey on the PFAS based on the information that they have collected by the municipalities or by everything else in the databases. This presentation, we cannot show any results because they are strictly confidential. So we will go into depth in how we have organized a methodology between us, OVAM and Abesco, how we collected the information, how we further go in the reporting phase, and some results, but it's more lessons to be learned from this very high-level desktop survey. Thus in June already OVAM requested us whether we were able to perform that PFAS desktop survey based on the information, the query phase of OVAM, the municipal inventory of risk sites, but also on the site and location mapping as shown in the presentation of Sam already. But due to the holidays, we only started then in August 2021 with the desktop survey. In the beginning, we were with a team of 5 consults that they, on a daily basis, go into depth in this inventory and do the reports. Afterwards, we added some team members to that team in order to finalize all the survey within the 6-7 months time frame that we have and to deliver then the end report to OVAM. The information was received at the beginning of August, but in several batches. Not all the municipalities were able to give over the information already at the beginning of the survey. Please note that we did not have any contact with the communes. It was restricted only to the desktop survey, to an administrative analysis. So our desktop survey was based on the inventory that we received from all the ARAP and environmental permits, only for the industrial use, the database and made available by OVAM of the soil investigation reports. It did not include any soil treatment plans or water purification plans or water extraction permits. That was not made available to us. And then it started our further screening. And in the process, we came then to a determination of how we handle all this file and give some points to come to a prioritizing in the survey. Already in the beginning of the start of the survey, we noted already that it was the registered that has been requested by OVAM and has delivered to us different quality of registers we have. It depended on the research of the commune themselves, that not all information within the registers was already completed. And also there was a big difference in the delivering of the information based on the environmental permits or the ARAP permits. For example, in November the 15th of 2021, we have done our first delivered report to OVAM. We came out that we still missing a 90 registers of cities within the East and the West Flanders, that we already did a screening for 39 cities. It was a really slow process because it was a lot of information, a lot of data that we received. There were 3 that were the screening in progress, but we need the most of the bunch in November 2021 start to work for it. And that's why I mentioned in the beginning that we have our team of 5, we have up-leveled them to more persons and also to more full-time equivalents. How did we start with the methodologies? How did we start with the screening of the inventory of municipality? And how did we go into depth and how to start with which city and which municipality to do it? Dus order to start the review process, we already indicated some prioritization within it, and we give a region with a high and risk so that we can start on the screening. How did we do it? We go through all the listing and merging all available information obtained by the cities, inclusion of all the risk, because the city give of the municipality give themselves also a PFAS risk indicator in between high, low and medium. That was based also on the mapping of OVAM. Then we calculated the percentage between the high-risk parcels compared with the total number of parcels that were available at that moment in the inventory. So we have a ranking of all the municipalities of East and West Flanders based on that percentage obtained. And so we worked from the high risk to the lower risk within the municipality. We did it municipality by municipality, the one after the other. We have done an elaboration of PFAS screening based on available data and ranking of this list. For example, our ranking was that we started in the west of Flanders with Heuvel and Terlouw-Reringen because they have the scores of 100% at that moment. That's purely to begin and to start to further in. Also, at that moment, we also have then the mapping of OVAM available that we take also into account to come up that ranking. Then how we start then on the list of all the parcels within one municipal, then and per location, we did a screening from the high level to the medium risk and then the other locations in order to make a quick review already possible and to go into depth. But the highest prioritizing at the beginning of our survive was all the locations screening that were located immediately in water extraction area, the so-called waterwingebieden in Dutch. Already in the beginning, we have difficulties within the risk inventories because the cities made up the inventory by parcel numbers, and we need to do the surveys by location number. They based the parcel numbers on the old Arab permits and environmental permits. So everybody knows that each time there's an other owner on it or something else, that we have a renumbering of parcels. There's the parcels that we found out in the registers. We did the research into depth to have the renumbered parcels that are at this current moment available. Because it was a very bunch of information made available, how then we start the prioritization of the PFAS cities. We developed an objective methods. But first I give you an example. For example, we received some information on a parcel. Then we go into depth of that parcel to see whether other parcels in the neighborhood were located there on the inventory. So we do then the mapping for that location in total. We check then the databases from the soil investigation report, whether on that location has any information available at that moment. And we did already the check whether this location, it's really effective example. The parcels are not with the pictures because we cannot show any results. For example, we have some plots that already we've seen on a quick view on GeoPunt or Google Earth that there was already residential areas. So these will give a high prioritizing than other industrial sites. Also here, the inventory gives a lot of parcels in it. Then it's up to us to make it as one location available in the report phases. How we start then the methodology for the PFAS to give a level on it on the risk side. We give a system of points. For example, when the parcel was located with the water extraction, it gives the highest points, and that's 5 in our example. And then the site within the 50 meters of 50 until 100 meters of the site more than 100 meters, you see that the points will dropping them. Also, a high point was whether the site was located nearby or within residential area. We looked also into depth if there was still an active operator available with an obligation to perform soil investigation reports, because it's that the case that they need to do a soil survey within the 10 years, it will be lower, because then we have the one of the active operator that will then do the screening, and it will not be OVAM that go further in the screening. Also, we look into depth if whether sensitive receptors are available. Those sensitive receptors at natural areas, the specific protection areas, the so-called SBZs in the Dutch language. Also, we look into depth whether it's at this moment industrial use, recreation, or residential use. And also, as already explained by Sam, we only look into some rubrics of the permit that were located to metal industry, photo industry, textile industry, and so on. Dus all there, we give also some points if the risk of using PFAS was higher in one industrial use than in another one. The inventory phase and the reporting phase, how did we do that? We started with the cadastral identification of the location. We use therefore the old environmental permits and look into depth into the cadastral registers to do a research on the numbers of the parcels. We use therefore only the internet researches made available. And then we took some server parcels and made it as one location available in the report phases. Per parcel or per location, we give them some details on the current owners, users and operators, also respecting the privacy rules. Based on the information from the researchers, sometimes we could immediately have the current operated. For a former operated, we did an internet research in order to view whether it was renamed that operator or it's still active or not active. And that we do only by internet research. We have no contact with any operators or any other information on it. It was all based by public available databases. For example, we have the number of the locations. This is one location, but that location was with a lot of cadastral information. It's given the risk by the city, the name of the city. We did then the check in order to view whether the numbers of the cadastral information was still correct as mentioned in the inventory. We did then also further into depth look into whether that location has been pointed to. I come later on. I took this example to demonstrate further on the process in our methodology. First, I will look into depth what was the zoning type of that location based on regional spatial plans or a spatial implementation plan, because we need to look into depths whether sensitive receptors were located within the 500 meter of that location, on the border of that location. We already then took a distance of it. Sensitive receptors were all habitats area, the special protected area, schools nearby, nurses nearby, hospitals, health institution, and we did it by Geopunt, the databank of geopunt.be or Google Earth. Dus for example, the same 194 location, was it in a residential area? You see it already on the photo. Yes. Was there a water extraction zone in it? No. A special protect zone? Was the distance more than 100 meters? Yes or no? Dus that was the one here. You see immediately some houses that it was not, but that it maybe could be also industrial use or not. Then we go further into depth to look whether this was on further information we find available in Google Earth or other data banks. The inventory phases, also we looked then into depth into the risk activity and the periodic obligation of soil survey based on the databases of OVAM. We need to drop some information of the former use of the location, because all the locations before 1970 was immediately a 0, because then was PFAS not used, and the actual use of the location. Dus for the same sites, we further then go into depth what was the actual activity there, where there's some Scots located, gardens located when the 100 mentally, where there are sensitive receptors, and you will see here in the data bank that we say, yes, we find 2 schools or 2 daycares of 3 times a different daycare nearby. What are the actual activities for that cadastral parking? Was it a garden, an apartment, and so on? The permit, is this still actual? No, in this case, it was historical. Was there an obligation to perform a soil investigation? No. And why was it categorized as PFAS? And then we did the research. Oh, it was indeed that industrial use, but that was stopped in 1962. In another case, we do the research and we find some soil investigation reports. We go then into depth to look whether PFAS was already in some of the reports, because that's also important information to give a number to determine whether this site needs to be on a high prioritization. We found also, we gave further on, for example, if it's within a water extraction zone, it immediately will go in a very high pond. Also, if they're in distance of a river nearby, that's also important information. Dus for example, this example was also an old industrial site. In this industrial site, we were located very next to a water protection area. We were located here within schools and daycares. So we have all the mapping for all these locations. Also, ear health institutions were nearby found. So if we then translate it to this one, you will see that we say, okay, there was a soil investigation report, but no PFAS was mentioned. It is within a residential area. It's really nearby schools. The boundary is the boundary of the Dutch and the Walloon region. What was the actual use? What was permitted? Is there an obligation of soil investigation? Is there PFAS potential? Yes, because there was a RIBRUS here under the environmental permits. And then you will see that we end up with a score. And it's important who higher this score, who higher the risk. And you will see further on that this will be translated in colors codes. So the color code was all purple is an urgent approach needed, and urgent is because it's recreation or there is a sensitive receptor on the location themselves. And then from red to white, it will depend on our total of the points we given. Dus the red is very high in the level. The quartals we did with all of this. Dus that is then in our reports, you will find then per location this color on it so that it can be used on a mapping later on. The reporting phase, we did a lot of carrying out the screening of Codarce pasture. We received 18,354 information lines, which were then located to more than 7,000 unique parcels, which resulted in around 2,000 locations. The sites within the residential area, there was no discussion. It is immediately colored purple, and then if there was no information available, it gets a white color on it. If the activity was stopped before 1970, we give them immediately a white color. What were the lessons to learn? It's that the detail of the information obtained strongly depends on the information given by all the municipalities. It's different from municipality to municipality. For example, there were cities that given the Arab list and then the environmental permit list, and they did not take it into account that the parcels came at the same of an Arab and later on an environmental permit. Also, how the desktop survey depends on the correctness of the listing, depends on the quality of the permits themselves. Or the permits actual, was it based on correct information? Was that based on really a good production process or not? And also based on the quality of the permit requests. Also, not all risk activities have already been included under the Arab license. If there was a location with only an Arab license and no further in an environmental permit phase, it was not easy to then include whether it was linked with textile or photo or something else, because the Arab license did not have the same rubrics as in the environmental permit. Also, if several parcels were located at the same location, it was very difficult to trace the source plot of the activity. Where then was the metal, for example, industry located on which parcel within that location. Also, we did not have any exact data of wastewater discharge, so that is still missing in this data bank. And also, we did not have any exact information on the production processes themselves in order to verify the correctness of the permits. And we learned that PFAS risk for residents mainly higher with the pharma companies than now on the actual database on the actual environmental permits. That were some lessons that we have learned doing the survey. Or we delivered, I thought, our report in June of this year. Dus we did not succeed in to do it within the 6 months because it was a lot of work. So if you have any questions, I think there's no time for some questions. Dus I give the floor back to you, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. Clear presentation. I see no questions in the chat, so I think the presentations were all very clear, but I think there will be some questions on the whole aspect of the inventory and things like that. So if there's, oh yeah, Sam, you want to come in?
Yep. Yes, I have something to add. Maybe it's not totally clear, but we give Abesco and Consultes did a similar exercise. Dus Abesco did the exercise for the province of Antwerp, Flemish Brabant, and Limburg, and Consultes did the exercise of the inventory for the province of East and Western Flanders. So, but we choose only one consultant to explain their process. I hope that will clear something out.
Yes, that's very interesting to add indeed. There is a question from Ilse van Keer. What were the criteria used to decide or not whether a suspected area could be excluded for further exploratory soil research? So,
at the moment, we did only commissioned exploratory soil research, the exploratory soil survey at the site where the triple fire foam is used. We started with those locations of those sites. Our further approach is in the nota, but I cannot go into detail how we are going to cope with the total list. I'm very sorry.
Okay, yes, and a question by Erwin de Koene is the information verified and checked through the online archives of the province of Western Flanders and Cartesius. So the Probat archives has plans that are often not in the communal inventories. Did you check those, Natasha?
We only based our information on the data made available by the inventory of the communes. Dus I know, for example, by East Flanders, we did not have a lot of information of the industrial sites in the ports located there, because that was not in the picture, because most of the information, if we are going to a higher level, a class 1 permit, most of the time, these ones are under the obligation to perform a soil investigation report themselves if the risk activities were in that permit.
Yeah. Okay. So normally that should cover the entire picture. Yeah. I see no further questions for the moment. I was wondering because if we talk about PFAS risks and also in other countries, mostly the firefighting sites are highlighted. But with this inventory, how many of the high-risk sites, so the red and purple colored sites, how many of those are firefighting related, or is it really now a broadening, and do we have an idea of the true risks of these sites as well for the PFAS then? So perhaps Natasha and Sam, you can.
These were a different exercise. The exercise for the firefighting sites, we did them in-house. So we came to the result of the 861 sites minus the 99 sites, which we determined afterwards there weren't PFAS suspected. The exercise of Consultes and Abesco was about industrial use, PFAS in industrial use. Where we eliminated the wastewater plants and etc. and the landfills, because otherwise the oefening was too big. There were several 1,000 sites extra.
There's another question. Do you know, from Lane Simons, do you know whether these inventory studies are also made in Brussels and the Walloon region? Well, we do know that in the Walloon and the Brussels regions, the PFAS are also high on the agenda for inventory of risk, but it's not clear how far they are with the exercises on that, and so I think they are doing some inventories, but mainly oriented also to the firefighting. We haven't seen any reports on that for now. Yeah. Then there's a question. How about the use of or application of PFAS nowadays? Do we have to be worried when eating a pizza?
For me, that is not totally clear. I suppose it's not in the pizza box at the moment, but we see PFAS is everywhere. So we see it's everywhere in the environment. So that's why we always say to the people to take some measurements to lower the risks. I think we have to deal with it. We have to learn to live with it with PFAS. All the inventory we see, there are several thousand sites in Flanders alone. So everybody is exposed to PFAS one way or another on different levels, of course. But we cannot investigate and remediate all the PFAS. There always will be a background exposition, and we have to deal with that.
Yes, and for many products, it is obligatory to label the presence of hazardous substances. For instance, if you have your water repellent or for clothing or things like that, but for the pizza boxes, we can say that there is initiative underway in regulation to stop adding PFAS in food contact materials. There's an initiative now on the way. So normally hopefully in a short while you will be safe with your pizza. Okay, there's another question. There's someone from the Walloon region, Philip Rock, who has some information. So for the Walloon region, the inventory is underway, and they check first the firefighting sites and also the Seveso sites, yes, and then some specifics non-Seveso. So it's on their way. Okay, thank you for that information, Philip. Any more questions from the people in the audience? Yes, there is a question by Aaron Byans. What will happen to the sites once PFAS is detected? What could be the consequence for the owners of these properties? And what if remediation proves necessary? Yeah. Sam, can you take that one?
I'm very sorry, at the moment I cannot go into the details of the further approach.
Approach is on the way, so it's a matter of decisions that are coming in the near future when these inventories are all finalized, probably. Yeah. And is there a status for the fluoropolymers, like the newer foams extinguishers? This is a question by Steven Boussard.
We have seen that there is a shift from the old PFOA to the newer PFAS compounds, the 6.2 FTS, for example. But it's not clear in the practice because we think that the firefighters they have a storage of the foam and they used it up and they so you cannot determine from this year on. There was no use of fluorinated fire foam with PFOA or only with the 6.2 FTS. It's not easy to determine it, but there will be shortly a report available about this on our website. we have made a study about it, and we will make it available. I think within a month or 2 months,
Okay.
at the beginning of 2023.
Yes, because indeed, apparently there's new mixtures nowadays, but still the old ones are also still applied. So it's quite complex matter to have a clear distinction. But we do use a distinction. That's a question from Herwig de Wilde, that PFAS activities dating from before 1970s are not, so activities before 1970s are not related to PFAS for this inventory. Is that?
That is a correct interpretation.
Yeah. And is that based on a scientific stated line, or is that just around
that is based about
the
timeline when the PFAS was produced in Europe and in the United States? So we think that that is
that should be
that should be the year.
Indeed. Okay. When will OVAM start to send letters to exploitants of industrial sites? Will they wait until the inventarization is finished?
I'm sorry, but it is part of the further approach, so I cannot go into the details.
That's not yet decided. So what about the offsite reuse of potentially PFAS polluted soil? Are the Grondbank and Grondwijzer looking into this?
All of us know we have to deal with the rules about
soil excavated soil regulation.
Excavated soil regulations. So since I don't remember since when, but you have to check it in the report, and it will be evaluated by the Grondbank and the Grondwijzer.
Yeah, PFAS is also there in the picture, so yes, we definitely can state that. Okay. Anyone for a last question, or otherwise you see already the slide that we are looking for a new series of webinars for the next year. And so for this year, we looked at specifically for the Flemish situation with the emerging contaminants in soil. We looked at the PFAS problems here, which gave a lot of information and a lot of debate, of course. But for the future, we're looking for other issues, other topics that we can deal with in a webinar series, and preferably in an international context. So elements that are at play in the international context, and then we'll try to build some new sessions on some specific emergent contaminant topics. And same as these sessions, we will have the target audience of mainly experts but any stakeholder involved with soil management. And so if you have suggestions, you can put them in the chat here, or you can send them to the Emconsoil mail, and or through the Emconsoil website. You can also always have some messages to us to reach us and give some suggestions for future sessions and future webinars. Okay, so with that, if there's no more questions, then I think we can end this session just before 2. So that's a nice thing. So once again, we've had these 4 webinars, which were very rich in information. And I think we had a good audience, so there was a good discussion always. Thank you to all the attendees who brought in these nice discussions, and we hopefully will have the same kind of webinar series in the next years. Mainly people from the Emconsoil network help to bring that information. So it might be that we can organize them every half year or every year, or depending on how many people are or how many topics are raised now. So the floor is open for giving suggestions for future sessions. Okay, and with that, I think we can close, and we can thank last time Natasha and Sam for their very clear presentations, and hopefully we'll see what comes out of the inventories in the future. And yeah, thank you all. It was a nice session.
Thank you.
Thank you.